people are thinking though, like, how do you clear that? Because I mean, it really is,
Sure.
it really is
Yes.
in your subconscious, right? I mean,
Yes.
it is your subconscious. We all
Mhm.
have that record player just going around and around and around and around.
Yes.
And you gotta, scratch it a little bit and
Yes.
get it, off course. So how do you clear somebody of that?
Great question. So when somebody, so to keep things simple, we'll call one of those programs or lines of code, we'll call it a belief. Some part of you believes I'm a bad person. Some part of you believes money is difficult to hold on to. Some part of you believes that if you ask for money, you'll be seen as a scam. Whatever it is, everybody has slightly different wording. So if we call that a belief, what we do is we can help the mind clear a belief in the same way that when you were a kid, you had a conversation with your parents, and at the beginning of the conversation, you believed with all of your heart and all of your might that Santa Claus was real. And at the end of the conversation, when you were assisted in helping, everything was mapped out so that you understood you never actually saw Santa Claus. Oh my God, that was somebody at the mall that was wearing a fake beard. The boots were actually Dad's. Oh, the bite from the chocolate chip cookie that I left out for Santa, Mom did that. And so suddenly, I call it like the Kaiser Soze moment, when everything gets done and you suddenly see everything from like a different perspective. The mind lets go of a belief going, oh gosh, that's not real. And it's almost like the grip of, no, Santa Claus is real, Santa Claus is real. Oh, I never have seen it. And it lets go. So there are ways to help the subconscious understand it never actually saw something. It's the equivalent of a conversation where you're convinced that you have a broken leg because it hurts and a doctor has shown you an x-ray with a fracture in it. But then he comes in and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, that was somebody else's x-ray. Here's your x-ray, and it shows a whole bone. It's just a contusion, it's just a bruise. So suddenly there's no belief whatsoever because your mind, we think we see things. And so through a conversation like the Santa Claus conversation, you can take these beliefs that were created when you were young, where you were convinced that you saw that you weren't good enough, you were convinced that money is difficult to hold on to, and through simple conversation and really beautiful, subtle, basic techniques, your mind can finally relax and go, oh, I never saw that, and let go of that grip.
That's beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful way of really crushing limiting beliefs. I mean, because that really is what it all comes down to, is we are we're horrible to ourselves. I mean, we're horrible. The things we say to ourselves when we mess up, and or just even in this day and age with social media, we crush ourselves because you see this, utopian, visual of what everything's supposed to look like. And then you look in the mirror and you're like, fuck, I don't look like that. You know what I mean? And then again, then you just, then you have limiting beliefs of how horrible you are and how terrible you are and how fat you are and how you have this little thing over here on your, extra little whatever. Right. And so, and so it's beautiful to try to identify what those things are, and then kind of prove. It's almost like in a court of law, you're trying to prove that that's actually not true.
It's very tricky though, because a lot of self-help and personal development tools out there, when you try to do a workbook or a workshop on yourself, they'll say, come up with your belief, write down, I'm not good enough. And they're like, come up with 10 reasons why that's not true. That doesn't work. That's trying to convince a part of you that believes something, oh, it's not actually true. It's like saying, if you go outside and you tell yourself the sky is green, it doesn't matter how many times you say it. If part of you believes you're seeing that the sky is blue, nothing is going to change that. In the same way, trying to override or prove to yourself or write down reasons why this isn't true, it only embeds that deeper, and it kind of makes
it. What's the solution then? What's the difference of like the doctor showing me an X-ray that shows that my bone is in, now it's proven. Now I believe that my foot's not broken, right? Or my leg's not broken.
Mm-hmm. So the process that we go through, and this is a weird one, because to this day, I can't do this on myself. I need someone asking me the questions and helping me see this, because everything has been set up almost like those spikes when you go out of the rental car company. You can't go back in. Like once it's set up, it's hard to go back. The mechanism that allows the mind to let go of a belief is when the mind realizes it never saw what it thinks it saw. So if you have a belief that I'm not good enough, if we go back and we ask people, like, where did you originally see this? They'll be like, well, my mom was screaming, you know, I'm a piece of shit, or I'm not good. And my dad was saying I was never any good. So to a 5-year-old, that is proof, that is seeing I'm not good enough. When the adult mind can come in and say, you saw 2 humans speaking their opinion at you. Did you ever see not good enough? When you have that kind of conversation and that type of question is asked from different angles and different ways, that's what breaks apart the subconscious's grip on the belief and actually lets it go. It's like, oh my God, I never saw I'm not good enough. I never did see that x-ray. I saw something else. I saw 2 overworked, very stressed adults who told everybody around them that they were no good. That I was like, when you contextualize and help the child mind see what the adult mind would see, that's what starts to break it apart. So there's a series of questions and ways that it can be answered depending upon how the belief is being held on to. But that's the core mechanism, is helping the mind understand it never actually saw that statement.
Love that.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about Shark Tank, man.
Yeah, I have an NDA. We
Okay,
had a client who has a brilliant product that he invented and released. And one of his big goals was to be up on national stages and to do really massive, you know, PR. And he was invited to be on Shark Tank and was terrified, absolutely terrified. And so he came to us. He had beliefs about, you know, fear of being seen, fear of being an imposter, what happens when he goes up there. And we were able to identify kind of the programs running, some of his past experiences that were triggered, some of the fears he had associated with what he had seen in the past. And we cleared those, and he was able to go on Shark Tank and absolutely crush it. So it was quite special.
I love Shark Tank. I don't know if there's an episode that I've missed of Shark Tank. That's how much I love Shark Tank. And that's so neat when I was reading about you. But yeah, I want to know a little bit about you, Erin. I mean, you know, first of all, what did your parents do growing up? And what kind of childhood did you live? Was it a privileged childhood, or was it average and ordinary, or, you know, what was it? What was your childhood like?
This is so cool. I have been doing podcasts for years. You are the first person who has ever asked me what my childhood was like and what my parents were like. The very first. This is so cool. It's fascinating. I lived what looked like from the outside your typical, probably upper middle class childhood. Looked sparkling perfect. I had mom and dad, I had a younger brother. They took me to all the soccer games, high-level soccer players, straight A student, cute little house right below San Francisco. Like, just couldn't look prettier from the outside. I started coming home from school crying probably around age 8, and then was diagnosed with major depressive order by the time I was in my early teens. And my parents would just shrug and go, we don't really know what's going on. You know, they kiss me goodnight and they say good job to things. And they would take me to my soccer games and everything looked good. So I started going to therapy as a teenager, and they'd sit there and they'd go, why are you so hard on yourself? Are your parents? I was like, no, they're not hard on me. My mom used to tell me, you were hard on yourself from the time you were 3. You always wanted to do better and do more. So I had this story. I'd go off and tell the therapist, it's just me. This is just how I am. And they just kind of scratch their head. I'm like, I have a perfect life. Not until I started doing this work and kind of, we have a type of session called mind clarity sessions that make the invisible visible, did I start having realizations that, wait a second, like my parents did their best. They were fantastic. And I received a number of messages in my programming that really had a big impact on me. things like my big thing was that I was never good enough. Number one, I'd be like, hey, I just did this project. And they'd be like, oh, we look forward to seeing how you do better next time. So it wasn't negative. There was no beating. There was no, you're bad. But there were messages that, oh, that's it, you can do better, right? And I didn't realize that I was getting those messages, despite them being super supportive, and how much those impacted me. I also believe that emotions weren't really something that were they weren't comfortable. They were not talked about. And so as a young kid experiencing sadness, it was like, I remember being told, well, you have everything. How could you be sad? Everything's taken care of for you. You're lucky. Look at all the people, and again,
the kids in Ethiopia. I'm sure you got the kids in Ethiopia lots of times. So yes.
Yes, there are kids starving. Yes. How could you be sad? How can you not be grateful? And so then emotions that would come up, it was like, no, it's not okay for me to be sad. So I'd be sad. No, but it's not okay for me to be sad. So all of these things, I think, that kind of go back to the old school way of parenting, and it's not okay to discuss feelings and emotions, and you need to be grateful. And parents who love their children so much, they want them to do better. These really, the way that I took everything in had a deep impact on me. And I ended up feeling like I was never good enough. I was always concerned. I felt like I wasn't grateful. I felt selfish. I didn't know what to do with feelings when they'd show up. I felt like I had to push them down and kind of be numb. And so by the time I became a teenager and into my 20s, I had a lot of issues and concerns, and felt like I was on a cycle of needing to achieve to prove myself. But no matter how much I achieved, it always felt empty.
Thank you for watching our short clips on Alonzo Academy. If you'd like to watch the next short clip, click here. If you'd like to watch the entire podcast, click here.